Okay, boys and girls, this one's going to be a quick one. So this is for the skill 55 and 64, and there's enough questions on this one, and I think it's on the easier side. So I'm actually just going to do basically kind of the first one of each one of these problems, and we'll just call it good from there. This one's probably going to be a little shorter than the previous ones, just because this one's a little bit simpler. Okay, so basically in these problems, this first set, skill 55, so this is the first two pages of this one. These are going to kind of be lumped together. Okay, in skill 55, what all you're doing is you're taking a expression. So remember that an algebraic expression is just anything without an equal sign. So if I zoom in here quickly on example 1 up here, this is an expression because it has no equal sign, right? If this said like equals 5, it would no longer be an expression. It would now be an equation. Okay, so at no point throughout this are we going to do anything to like both sides of the equation. I'm not going to be adding 1 or anything like that because I can't do that. I don't have an equal sign. So I don't have another side of the problem that I could add or subtract or do something like that. Okay, so all I can do in this one is just combine things that are already here. Okay, so I'm not going to be getting rid of anything. I'm not going to be removing anything. All I'm going to be doing is just combining what I can. Okay, and so in the example here, they have you guys kind of circling and putting squares around different terms. So you're absolutely welcome to do that. And you just want to be looking to see which ones kind of go together. So for example, in this first example, I only see one of my 3 terms. Remember, the terms are separated by addition and subtraction. I only see one of the terms. Okay, I'm going to circle it. I'm going to do let's do a triangle. Okay, and that is my 3x. Okay, so I've got 3x as my only x term. Okay, and as far as my constant terms, and when you see the word constant, that just means a number, right? It's just kind of a fancy math word for a number, okay, that has no variable. Okay, so 5 and this -1, this -1, would be my constant terms. Okay, so I'm going to circle those. Okay, and you'll notice when I circle this, I circled it to include the -1, right? So the idea is I want to make sure that I realize that that number is not just a 1. That number I need to treat as a -1 because that subtraction sign in front of it is going to make it essentially negative. Okay, so then I go on and I basically just combine what I can. Well, the 3x term is by itself. There's no other x's, so I'm just going to bring down the 3x. Okay, it just gets kind of included in my problem. I want to make sure that I include it, but it doesn't get changed at all. There's no other terms to kind of combine it with. Okay, the 5 and the -1, well, if you combine 5 and -1, what do you get? Well, 5 minus 1 or 5 plus -1, those are both equal to 4. Okay, and that is where this 4 comes from. Okay, so the final answer in this case is 3x plus 4. Now, one thing I want to be really clear on, please make sure, do not tell us that 7x is the answer for a problem like this. Okay, you cannot add something with an x and a constant term. Okay, these are not like terms, you cannot add them. The only way we could add something in a situation like this would be if this 4 had an x on it. But remember that 4 came from the terms that were constant. Okay, so it didn't have an x to it, so that means this would be as far as I could go, 3x plus 4. Okay, so let's take a look at the first example. Because this one will give us a kind of good look at what we're going to see, okay? So on this first line, we're going to list the terms with x, okay? So of my terms, I have 4 terms in this problem. 2 of my terms have x, okay? So I'm just going to circle those. Okay, and again, notice how I included the negative in it. I didn't include the addition sign. I probably could if I wanted to, right? I could circle it with the plus sign. Well, the only difference is there, though, the plus with... that looks like +3. And that also looks like +3. So circling the plus sign doesn't matter as much, but the minus sign, the subtraction sign, is going to matter. Okay? Because that's going to effectively make this x a -1x instead of a +1x. So make sure you pay attention to that as we go through these. Okay? So I'm going to put my 2 x terms. Let me clean up my work a little bit here. I'm going to put my 2 x terms on the first line. So 3x and -x. Okay, and now I go to my constant terms. These ones I'm going to box up just to keep them separate. Okay, and so on this constant terms line, I'm going to put 7, and I'm going to put -4. Okay, so then we actually need to simplify the expression. So what we're going to do is we're going to put together everything we see that has like terms. Okay, so we just talked about how the x terms are here. Well, 3x plus negative 1x, that's going to give me negative 2x. Or I could also look at it as 3x minus 1x, and that's also, I don't know why I put negative 2, sorry, excuse me, should be positive 2x. Okay, because 3x plus negative 1x gives me positive 2x. Okay, constant terms, same thing. We're going to combine our terms here, 7 and negative 4. Well, when I combine 7 and negative 4, it's effectively the same as subtracting. Okay, so it's going to be 7 minus 4, or in other words, 3. Okay, remember back to your integer rules. Feel free to use a calculator, kind of check yourself. But these are things you should be able to do even without a calculator. Okay, so my final answer for the simplified algebra expression here would be 2x plus 3. Okay, one thing I do want to mention, because I've seen a few people submitting work to me. Let's say that this 7, okay, so don't change your problem, but I'm just going to show you. Let's say this 7 had been a negative. Okay, please make sure that if you combined a negative and a negative, you don't subtract in that case. Okay, negative 7 plus negative 4, those are both negative. So your answer is going to be more negative. It's just a big collection of negatives. So the correct answer, if this was the problem, if it was negative 7, would be 2x minus 11. Okay, so please keep that in mind. Okay, watch out for your integer rules because that is the most common mistake you're going to make if you mess up these problems. Okay, all right, so that should get you through all the way through all the Skill 55 questions. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at these Skill 64 ones. Okay, this has you basically making a table and graphing lines. Okay, so I'm going to do the first one right here. Okay, and basically all we're going to do is they're giving me a list of values for x. Okay, and I'm going to plug them into this equation. Okay, and where am I going to plug them into? Well, if I know that x is negative 2, I'm just going to plug that in for the x here. So in this second column here, you're going to do negative 2 plus 2. Next one would be negative 1 plus 2. Next one is 0 plus 2. And you'll notice every time I'm going to put my x in parentheses. Whenever you substitute into a variable, we've talked about this quite a bit, you want to make sure you include parentheses there. You're going to make way less mistakes if you do that, because it's going to basically kind of help keep you honest, help you prevent you from making a lot of silly mistakes. Okay, this one it doesn't matter as much, but for some of the later ones it will. Okay, so then I'm going to combine what I can. So negative 2 plus 2, well, a negative 2 plus a positive 2, that would give me 0. Negative 1 plus positive 2, well, there's more positives than negatives there, so that means I'm going to end up with a positive answer, and 2 minus 1 is 1. Obviously, we know what 0 plus 2 is. That's 2. And 1 plus 2, that's another one we've done for a long time. We know that that is 3. Okay? So at this point, we've done the hard work. Okay? And even this one really wasn't that bad. Okay? Now it's just a matter of plugging in our values. So now it wants us to give it as a point. Okay? So now we're just going to combine our x column and our y column and put them together into our fourth column. So the first point is going to be negative 2, 0. The next point is negative 1, 1. And again, I'm just pulling these from the x and the y. So the x is negative 1, the y is positive 1. Okay? The x is 0, the y is 2. The x is 1, and the y is 3. Okay, so I've done the table. I've filled it all out. I am good to move on to the next part of my problem. And all of these is going to be us plotting the points. Okay, so basically I'm just going to take this fourth column again, and now I'm just plotting them. So if I plot the point negative 2, 0. So remember, you go negative 2 in the x direction, and then up 0. So my first point should be on the x-axis at negative 2, 0. Okay, the next one, I go left to negative 1. Remember, negative 1 is my x-coordinate. And then I go up to positive 1. For the next one, to start at 0, my x-coordinate is 0. I go up to 2. And finally, 1, 3. Now you'll notice, these points made a straight line, right? So if you've done your table correctly, you should end up with points on a straight line, okay? But also remember, this is review, okay? This equation is in slope-intercept form. If you want to check yourself, you should be able to graph this in slope-intercept form. So remember that these numbers correspond to parts of the graph. Okay, so for example, in this problem, the b value looks like positive 2. Okay, well, positive 2, if I go to my y-intercept, my y-axis, my y-intercept is at positive 2. So that makes sense. Okay, in addition, my slope, now remember there's no number over here where the slope should be, so if I need to put a number there, if there isn't one, I can just write in a 1. Okay, and again, remember slope is rise over run, so that means it's 1 over 1. Remember that we can always put a number over 1 to turn it into a fraction. And so now if I look from my y-intercept point, if I rise 1 and run 1, I have this point. Rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. Okay? I end up with this exact line. So there's a few ways you can do this one. So on some of these later problems, you know, for example, the first one on the next page, they give you a table to work from. Okay? And you're going to follow the exact same process we just did. But for these other ones, they don't give you a table. So you have two options. You could either make a table, or you could graph them using the method that we know based on what I just described above, the y equals mx plus b. Find the information, find what b is, plot your y-intercept, find what the slope is, use rise over run to find your next point. Okay, I'm going to leave it up to you guys to decide how you want to do it. Okay, if you do want to make a table, use similar numbers to what they used in this one. Okay, you don't need to go super big, because if you make your x values too large or too small, your graph, you won't be able to fit the points on the graph. So pick similar numbers to what they did if you are going to use the table. Okay? All right. With that, that's going to move us through this question. The rest of this should be review, so hopefully you guys won't have too much difficulty with this one. I'm going to end the recording now.